welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah.
For this episode, we will be discussing Jingo by Terry Pratchett. But first, Sarah, what's something great that happened recently?
Something great that happened recently. I helped my father put up a bookshelf. He has had this bookshelf sitting in pieces on the floor of his living room since about December. It is now March. So it was high time that he put his bookshelf up.
I mean, I feel like the first 2 months of the year don't count because that's just how long it takes to recover from the holidays.
No, I think he should have had it up sooner.
All right, fine.
Very, very nice attempt to justify it, but no.
I was just thinking how long it took me to put away my Christmas decorations. I did beat your father by a little bit.
And also, like, Christmas decorations, they're not sitting on the floor. Well, presumably they're not sitting on the floor of your living room, and they're not, like, taking up lots of space on the floor of your living room the way that this bulky package was.
That's true. That's true. My good thing, well, shout out to the daffs, my daffodils. We got the first bloom this week, so that was very exciting. Very late. Usually they're earlier. Well, I guess it's still March. But anyway, it's been cold. But my good thing is, I think, going to be that Daniel got us a shoe rack. For some reason, he got tired of me just throwing my shoes all over the living room.
Gee, I wonder why.
So now we have a shoe rack, and I have to admit it's pretty nice. So he was right.
Good going, Daniel.
Yeah. And what are we drinking tonight?
I have opened a bottle of red wine.
Ooh.
Don't ask me more about it, because I could not tell you. It was a bottle that I had in my bottle collection.
I'm also drinking red wine out of an actual bottle for once.
An actual bottle?
Yes.
Now that is a change.
My company got gift baskets for clients for Christmas, and not all of them were able to get delivered, so I graciously took them off of their hands.
I have to say, I think that's a better company gift than a 10-pound bar of chocolate.
Yeah. What?
A company that I used to work for gave out 10-pound bars of chocolate.
Oh, it probably wasn't even good chocolate.
Oh, it was good chocolate because
okay.
It was Ghirardelli chocolate.
Okay. I'm less upset then.
So genuinely good chocolate, but it was a 10-pound bar of chocolate. It did come in the form of a 10-pound bar of chocolate. It was not 10 pounds of bar chocolate. So you had to, like, break it up, and it was very difficult. And the point of that story is that a bottle of wine is better.
Oh no, it was a gift basket by a local gift basket company, none of the Harry and David bullshit. And it was all local products too. So it was like, oh, chocolate covered cherries from Chuckanut Bay and that kind of stuff. I'm actually extremely proud of them. And I taste tested it extensively.
That does sound like a lovely gift, and still better than a 10-pound bar of chocolate.
Yeah. Also, that sounds impossible to share. The whole point of a gift basket is that, like, 10 different people from the office can pick what they want and take it home.
No, you could not share these because you literally had to break them up with a hammer.
Ah.
Also, I had to wrap all of them. So I wrapped like 500 10-pound bars of chocolate.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me appreciates the stunt.
Apparently they did this every year.
That would be funny once, but only once.
Yeah, I did get a bar of chocolate as a thank you for having wrapped all of these bars of chocolate. And it did take me like a year to use it all up because that's a lot of chocolate.
You should have had a chocolate eating party. Just a bunch of fondue.
I gave a lot of it away. I mean, in very unappealing fractured chunks because, like, literally I took a chisel and hammer to it.
Impressive. Well, I'm not drinking chocolate. I scavenged the bottle of wine. I don't remember the brand, but it's somewhere from the Columbia Valley.
It sounds lovely.
It's good. Yep. Have we read anything good lately?
I started reading Eyes of the Void by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I didn't get very far because then I realized that we have a lot of podcasting in very short order, and I really should be reading my next podcast book.
Similarly, I stopped reading a ridiculous amnesia fan fiction because I was like, oh, we have a recording tonight. I should read that book. Oh, amnesia is my like guilty pleasure. No,
I mean, I don't know if I would.
silly pleasure.
Yeah, I would say I don't know if I would call it a guilty pleasure because you don't seem too guilty about liking it. But
No, trash like melodrama indulgence. I'll just call it that. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's a more accurate statement.
I don't think I read a lot of amnesia fic.
It's not, it's a common trope, but there's not a whole ton of it. It's not like high school alternate universe, which are a dime a dozen.
Or coffee shop AU.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of those. I know. I'm not allowed to say that out loud. Anyway, but what we did read for today was Jingo. And it turns out I was right. I did know what Jingo means.
Before we get any farther, I'm a little sad that you're not making a big production about it being our journey to the center of the Discworld.
Really? Have I finally gotten you with Stockholm Syndrome?
I mean, I am never going to say it like excitedly, but I feel like it's tradition for you two.
Well, in that case, please join us on our next step and my first step on this particular stepping stone on our journey to the center of the Discworld. World.
Thank you.
I refuse to learn how to do an echo sound effect. But that's right. It's true. Confession. I've never read Jingo before.
That really surprises me.
I know you've mentioned it's one of your favorites.
It is a book that I like quite a lot, yeah. And so clearly I have failed in my cousinly duties if this is the first time you're reading it.
I mean, yeah, I just got weird gaps in Discworld. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I did not ever set out and go, I'm going to read these in order. I just kind of pulled them off the shelves completely random.
What was I thinking? For shame, Sarah, for shame.
Yes. Jingo, or Jingoism, is indeed fanatical patriotism, especially with a warlike bent to international policy. And, hey, did you know this was the anti-war book?
Gee, it sure is the anti-war book.
We had to cut out, I think, about half of our notes because they ended up just being reduced down to, wow, this sure is an anti-war book.
Yeah. You know, Pratchett has a lot of social commentary, and a lot of his social commentary in this book is that war is bad.
Who knew? I mean, we're being glib. I quite liked a lot of the anti-war commentary. It just, that's what it was.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, this is, in fact, genuinely one of my favorite Terry Pratchett books. But yes, a lot of it does come down to war is bad.
Indeed.
Which is a fair point.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with it. There was, I think it was like 3 or 4 pages long near the end of the book where someone is just talking about 2 of the casualties. And it's like, oh yeah, this 19-year-old kid, he just showed me a picture of his girlfriend. He was planning on proposing when he got home. Did you know he was an apprentice at this one thing? And just like pleasantly talking about these young adults
who have just been decapitated.
Yeah, like the day before. There's no time gap at all.
No,
and
not even the day before this particular scene. They have this battle, and then immediately after they start this conversation. And so these kids were literally just died like 5 minutes ago.
The conversation is so lighthearted, and of course Samuel Vimes, our main character, is appropriately appalled by this. And I remember just getting to the end of that and going, gee, this sure is an anti-war book.
Yep.
That was genuinely very sad if you like let yourself stop and think about it for half a second.
Yeah.
Instead of just powering through.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, for all that we're glib about it, there's a lot of very tragic events in this book related to the consequences of war and all of the deaths that it causes. And you just kind of have to laugh because there are some jokes, but the heart of it is not very funny.
No. And then, unfortunately, some of the jokes weren't very funny. Not about anti-war so much, but Pratchett continues to be a little hit and miss with his portrayal of Middle Eastern coded characters.
Yes, I do think that he does a lot better in this book than he did in some of the very first Discworld books, because most of the time it's clear that we're supposed to be laughing at the racists, which is not clear in the very first books. But he certainly does not do a good job the entirety of this book.
Yes, I agree. Most of the overt racism, there's a lot of slurs and name calling, is specifically look at this dumb idiot who's being rude and using bad words. And that, I was like, yeah, sure. Maybe this is the wrong hill to die on, but the use of food really didn't sit well with me.
You mean the way they talked about curry?
Yeah. That Vindaloo, isn't that Indian food?
He definitely does not distinguish between his countries in there.
Is India considered the Middle East at all?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I mean, I get he makes Klatch, which is a region that has warring tribes, and you're like, yeah, okay. But for some reason, just mixing Indian food into that, I was very not okay with, and that's probably a bad hill to die on for me.
I mean, but it is understandable because Klatch is, Arab coded, Middle East coded, and then they have this thing that's very much not that. But yeah, he's not he still has some missteps for sure.
Now, on the other hand, there are a lot of conversations around food and white people who eat food of other cultures, but then are very rude to the people who make the food for them, that I thought was a good conversation. And there were a couple of times when Colin?
I say Colin. I've never actually listened to a Discworld audiobook, so maybe there's an official pronunciation that I'm missing.
He's probably our most racist main character in this book, I would say.
Intentionally so.
That's not a villain specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he is the everyman, I'm not racist, I just don't like people who aren't like me.
Yeah.
Who of course is very racist.
But then also you need that side of the conversation so that then other characters can give their long explanation for why he's being ridiculous. Particularly, there's one moment where I think it's Nabi and says, oh, what? They're going home and eating curry just like we do every day. And that was very funny.
Yeah, Colin is a great foil to some of the characters like Nabi or Vimes who are pointing out the many large and gaping holes in his insular worldview of, Ankh-Morpork. I really liked, he says a slur about one of the proprietors of a curry place in Ankh-Morpork, and Vimes calls him up to the office and they have a conversation about it. And we never actually see the conversation. We just see the way that Colin is reacting to being told, hey, you can't actually call someone that's inappropriate. And I thought that was a really nice way of handling it and seeing how someone reacts to that conversation.
And then of course with the ironic, well, I don't care what people call me, and then getting in a tizzy when Nobbs doesn't call him Sergeant.
Yes.
Yeah. There's also a really wonderful conversation that Nobby has with him where Nobby perfectly executes the just ask dumb questions strategy for dealing with bigotry. The oh, why is that funny? I don't get it. Can you explain that joke to me? Now, of course, in the book, Colin actually goes on to explain the joke, whereas in real life, most people get embarrassed and shut the fuck up, which is generally the goal.
Yes, but here we do get Colin to say, white is the state of mind. And I'm still not sure whether or not I think Nobby is sincere in his questioning of Colin, or whether he's just that, I don't want to call him stupid, but that, what's the word I'm looking for?
out of the loop.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be a little bit of both. We definitely do see Nobby giving Colin shit, like purposefully in a very similar way. So I could definitely see this having been on purpose just to rile him up.
And the text, I mean, to be fair, I think the text does kind of imply that like Nobby has more of an idea of what's going on than Colin necessarily thinks he does.
But sometimes Nobby is like just completely in his own world and has no idea what's going on around him.
Yes.
But in this case, I do think there was kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like,
yeah,
it wouldn't be the first time he's been more astute than he's giving credit for. I love Nobby Nob so much.
and Nobby, I really think Nobby is one of the standout characters in this book because he's got some excellent plot lines. We'll talk about one of them later.
Oh, we can go on to that now. I did just want to say one of my other gold star, excellent job, Pratchett moments was their conversation. At one point, one of the Clatchians pulls out the telescope, binoculars or something. I think it's a telescope.
Telescope, I think, yeah.
There's, to me, a telescope is like what you use to see planets, but he was just using it to look at someone far away. I guess you can still use telescopes for that, but
yes.
Anyway. And one of the Ankh-Morporkians is like, oh, wow, so advanced. Those came out this year and you already have one. And the Clatchian is like, I inherited this from my grandfather.
Yeah, it's an excellent scene, especially because Lord Rust, who we've seen before in previous Discworld books, and we'll see again, is like part of the nobility, really dumb in the sense that he doesn't believe that there's any value to people who aren't Ankh-Morporkian.
Or noble.
Or noble, yes.
He very specifically is a slumlord, so.
Yes. So it's a nice contrast to see just how horrible he is.
He's also used with very little subtlety to show how the people pushing for war are not the ones who will end up dying.
Yes.
They don't mind throwing other people's lives at the conflict that benefits them. Hey, did you know this is an anti-war book?
You know, I think that I'm starting to get that feeling from our conversation. But we said we're going to talk about Nobby.
Yeah.
So one of his plot lines is that he has to dress up as a woman.
To go undercover.
Yes, to go undercover. He, Colin, and Vetinari. Side note, I love Vetinari. We're not actually going to talk about him very much in this episode, but I love Vetinari.
This was a good book for him. He had some good page time.
Yes. That's probably, honestly, one of the reasons why I like this book so much. Because it's got a lot of Vetinari page time. So they are all undercover in Clatch, and Nobby has to dress up as a woman. And it's actually treated a lot more seriously than you would expect. I mean, like, there are some jokes about it, but it really feels like Pratchett is continuing his exploration of gender identity that kind of starts with Cheery, the dwarf's introduction in whichever book she's introduced in. So Nobby really starts to feel like he is a woman and like he is in that role. And it was just a kind of a more thoughtful approach than I was necessarily expecting.
I mean, there is an interesting experience that he has where he immediately is treated very differently. Like, I think one of the first things, not the first thing, one of the first things that happens after they go undercover is they all go to a bar to try to get information, and he gets kicked out because women aren't allowed in that bar.
Yes. And he actually gets along really well with the women and like feels like he fits in with them. I would say probably more so than he ever fits in with any of the other men in this book, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of the jokes around that situation are along the lines of women are expected to be attractive and Nobby is not. Was never described as attractive when he presents as a man and just continues to not be described as attractive when presented as a woman. A woman. And there's something there because I mean that's that still jokes around cross-dressing, but it's more all of these men are appalled that there's a woman in sexy clothes who's not sexy.
Yeah, and I think it would feel worse if there hadn't been so many jokes previously, both in this book and in the previous books, about how unappealing Nobby is as a human being physically.
Right. And it's also a running theme that he's just not seen as a sexual partner option by anyone.
Yes.
Right? Ever. But as soon as he is presenting as a woman, all women are potential sexual partners, right? And so his unattractiveness is no longer overlooked.
Yes.
Because now his appearance is an integral part of him. And isn't that weird how men and women are treated differently in that way?
Yeah. All in all, I really like that as a subplot. And I actually I don't think that his gender explorations ever comes up again in any of the other books. I could be mistaken. I don't think I am, but I could be mistaken. And we do get books about where Pratchett is discussing gender identity, but never in the context of Nobby. And I wish that actually had been a theme that continued throughout some of the later books, because I think it's worth exploring.
Nobby Nobbs has always sort of existed in a liminal space.
Mm-hmm.
It's often brought up that no one's totally sure what species he is. Also for humorous effect. But it's interesting how he never really fits in anywhere, but is also maybe not accepted everywhere, but no one has the balls to kick him out either.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that could be done with Nobby as a character. And I think that Pratchett focused on other characters, because he had stories to tell, which is fair and valid. But I think that he could have done more with Nobby. And he starts to in this book.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I do love Nobby Nobbs. Oh yeah, and no one's also sure what color he is. I think at one point he's described as some part of him is every color that you would expect a person to be.
Yes. Which is part that relates back to his conversation with Colin about like what qualifies as white, because he's like, but am I? And Colin says, that's a state of mind.
Well, he starts by saying, but you're brick red.
Yes.
Which Colin did not appreciate.
It's true, though.
Okay, I did have one more thing about the portrayal of Clatchians in this book.
Okay.
Pratchett does some interesting things with the font. Like, there's just a different font, kind of a curly Q, not quite cursive, kind of cursive-y thing, for when someone is speaking in Clatchian. And I really liked that. I thought that was a very elegant way of just like, yeah, this is a different language, don't worry about it. But I didn't love the way he wrote Clatchian accents in dialogue.
Are you talking about, like, not a phonetic accent, because he doesn't really do phonetic accents, but the way that he uses quote unquote Clatchian in dialogue, or the way that it actually appears on the printed page?
Well, that's why I'm torn. I thought the way he wrote, not broken English, but yet, what would you call it? Because it's not a phonetic accent, but it's also definitely supposed to be heavily accented dialogue.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever the word for it is, I found it unnecessary and cringy.
Yeah, he peppers in like Clatchian into the dialogue.
Wait, are we talking about the same thing?
I don't know if we are, but I'm talking about how he like has the Clatchian characters end sentences with offendy, for example.
I didn't mind that. I thought when a Clatchian is speaking in, well, not English, Ankh-Morporkian, they have really bad grammar. It just got old. That's what's that doing?
I think all of it got old, to be honest.
Yeah. But one thing I did like was that they would occasionally throw in one of the other font letters. That I liked. I really enjoyed that. I don't know, do weird stuff with font. That's fun.
Yeah.
And so I end up being split for two different reasons.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that they had a different font, but also it still seemed kind of like a stereotypical font, if that makes sense.
I think that might be splitting hairs.
It probably, like, I'm not going to dispute that.
I like of all ways to, because okay, people do speak other languages and they do have accents that aren't Ankh-Morporkian, and that is relevant to the story that someone is being othered because of their culture and their language. So, like, including that wasn't unnecessary. And how do you portray that? And I think the font was one of the better ways to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I liked having that distinction. We did only see it in Clatch, where they are not being othered for speaking Clatchian because everyone there is speaking Clatchian and Colin is the weird one out. But I don't know.
But people speaking with accents in Ankh-Morpork is definitely relevant.
Yes, and
because
so
they're getting targeted with hate crimes.
yeah, yes, but we didn't see, so that we saw like the one letter.
Right.
And I'm not complaining about that.
Well, and the bad grammar, which I'm complaining about.
The bad grammar, yes, I will complain about that. But I'm specifically talking about when the font is used to denote that they are speaking Clatchian. That was only in Clatch. It was kind of a stereotypical looking font.
I really think that is, I mean, okay, sure.
I don't have a solution. I'm not proposing any better ideas, but
the idea of using a different font, though, doesn't bother you.
No, it's
just the font that they picked.
Yes.
Okay, that. All right.
I mean, and it's not, I wouldn't say that it bothered me entirely, just that I have mixed feelings about the font they picked.
Okay, but I think using the font that way was smart because
yes,
there's not really another way to do it that's as streamlined for the reader.
I agree with you. So if Pratchett had been entirely, like, if I hadn't had any other qualms about the way that he handles race in this book, the font would not have bothered me.
Okay. I mean, just because he picked one that kind of has curly cues like Arabic does, is that the problem?
It just, yeah. I mean, it just felt like he...
Should he have used papyrus?
Yes. or Comic Sans.
I feel like that's getting into the conversation of no matter what font you choose, someone's going to be mad about it.
That's possible.
And out of all of the much worse ways to handle that, I don't know. You got most of the way there.
Yeah, I won't argue there.
Okay, something we have greatly not debated, but disagreed about is our enjoyment of politics in books. And this book is a great example of the kinds of politics that I really enjoy.
Because Vetinari is a great politician. I would vote for him any day.
No, the shit Sam Vimes does. In one of the very early scenes, he's investigating a crime that is very obvious. Someone is trying to pin it on someone. And so he's in a room with a bunch of politicians and he's like lying without outright lying and dropping facts to see how the people around him react to try to figure out who in that room could be in on it or something like that. And just that kind of like, not interpersonal politics, because we're still dealing with someone's trying to start a war. I consider that's political politics. But it's on such a personal scale, or we're seeing it happen instead of just, what do you think that country's gonna do? That's the kind of politics I can't stand. I want to see it. I don't want to just hear about it.
There's a lot of maneuvering on an individual level that we see in this book that then affects politics on a global scale, or on a disc scale, I guess I should say.
On a tertular scale.
I can say disc.
But tertular is a good word that we should start using more often.
Tertular is a good word that we should start using more often, yes. I forget where I was going with this, but yes, we do see that kind of like interpersonal politicking.
And we also see Vetinari doing some excellent subterfuge, which we're not doing a spoiler section, so we probably shouldn't talk about too much.
I would say that we also see Vetinari doing some interpersonal maneuvering.
Oh, he does.
Yes.
Absolutely. He pulls an amazing con, just like the classic smoke and mirrors sleight of hand, and it's fantastic. He's a man of many talents.
He is the best.
Okay, so we generally ask, when should you read this book? This cannot be the first watch book that you read. There's so much baggage that Sam Vimes has with authority and his title, because he is a knight and he has to deal with that. I think you would just be completely lost if you tried to read this book first.
Yeah, I don't think this is a good starting point to any of the Discworld series. You definitely, if you're reading the City Watch books, you should definitely read the other ones first.
That being said, I've been complaining recently about series and how frustrating it is to read them when they come out and have to wait and forget everything in between. But I think Pratchett does a very good job in this book. Like, you have to have read the other ones first to have some kind of background knowledge, but his character introductions are all so very well done that it gets you totally back up to speed with who everyone is, what their relationships are with each other, what their whole deal is. And I just really enjoyed that, especially Angua, my wife.
Are you going to insert the my wife clip right here?
No, because I'm not making a joke.
No, but your words were making a joke. I don't have any particular comments on Angua. I mean, she is great. Like, don't get me wrong. But thinking about it, I think it's interesting that for all that the other City Watch books have included Vimes as the main character, I think this is the first City Watch book where I would actually call him the protagonist who doesn't get shown up by any other City Watch member.
You mean Carrot?
Yes, I mean Carrot.
I'm trying to think of one of the other City Watch members who's shown him up. I think it's just Carrot.
I think it's just Carrot. But like in Guards and in Men at Arms, even though Vimes is like quote unquote supposed to be the main character, he is not the one who does most of the action in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Where he is in this book. I mean, like, I would say that he is driving a lot of the plot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That being said, Carrot does still get to do some very, I don't even want to say badass.
Sweet ass.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Carrot is still in this book. Carrot still has an important part to play, but
he feels so much more like a supporting character for the first time. I agree.
Yes. Which is something that really only just came to me as we have been talking about this. But I do think that it's interesting.
Yeah, I really love Carrot, which I know we've not argued about. I like him more than you do. Not to say that you dislike him.
We have talked about it. You do like Carrot more than I do. But you're right, I don't dislike him.
I think in this book we get to see him using his powers of good in a manipulative way. We've gotten glimpses of that before. But he just has this amazing ability of being so sincere that everyone just does what he wants.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call what he does in this book manipulative per se, because I think he's being genuine about it. Like, I don't think that he's trying to manipulate people.
I think, like Nobby, there are some glimpses where you're like, Carrot is more self-aware than other characters take him for.
I agree there, but I don't actually think that the scenes that he is using his powers in, that makes it sound like he has supernatural powers. He does not. He's just very charismatic, and he can like make people get along, basically. And I'm sure that in these particular scenes, he's thinking, yes, I want these people to get along. But I don't necessarily think that he's doing it in a manipulative way to try to make things happen that he like wouldn't be attempting for anyway, because we don't actually, like, there's no gain to be gotten, or we don't see him benefit, or the watch benefit, or Vimes benefit necessarily seeing him organize a soccer game or a football game between like members of two opposing armies.
So I think maybe we're using the word manipulative differently. That just means getting someone to do what you want them to. You don't have to be exploiting them. You don't have to be benefiting from it. It just means they're behaving in a way you want them to, that they wouldn't do otherwise.
Okay, yes, I think we're using it in a different way.
Yeah. I agree, because he's not exploiting anybody. Carrot would never.
And he's not benefiting, no.
No, but he, is preventing mass amounts of bloodshed purely through guilt and puppy dog eyes and redirection. Delightful.
He does have a talent.
I do think it's interesting. His relationship with Angua gets commented on by Vimes and Angua quite a bit in this book. I agree. He doesn't sound like a great boyfriend.
He's too selfless, I think, to be a really good boyfriend, because there's a scene or a portion of this book where Angua is basically kidnapped effectively. And instead of spending all of his time worrying about her, he goes and tells Vimes, and then he's like, we're doing something. She wouldn't want me to stress about it, so I'm just gonna go to sleep and get my strength back, which is a very sensible, logical thing to do. But there's no emotion there, and there's no passion there.
I don't know if that's the best example, because the other side of it is he knows Angua can take care of herself. It's not like she's a damsel in distress.
No, but I don't know. I feel like you'd still want someone to act a little more worried than that.
Yeah. I feel like Angua's example at the beginning of the book, she feels like if she shaved her head, he would notice, but he wouldn't care. To me, that's much more, I don't know. Maybe I have weird priorities.
Well, no, I agree with you. And she also has a conversation with him at the beginning of the book where she is saying things and he's clearly not listening because he's responding with completely unrelated responses, which is no, that's just bad boyfriend behavior.
Yep. But there's one thing that Vimes questions the relationship about that I completely disagree with, which is he's extremely nervous about Angua being a werewolf and is asking Carrot how he even handles that, implying, or I think directly saying in the narrative of the book, not out loud, that you ought to be terrified of her, right? She could bite your hand off at any moment, basically, which is a bad criticism, and Carrot's reaction is correct and perfect, which is, let me find the actual quote because it's good.
I mean, Vimes is quite speciest. We like him as a character because of how he tries to go beyond that and work through his issues, but he's not actually a very likable person.
So her turning into a wolf occasionally doesn't worry you? Vimes couldn't bring himself to say it. No problems? Oh, not really, sir. She buys her own dog biscuits and she's got her own flap in the door. When it's full moon, I don't really get involved. And that is A+ boyfriending.
Yes.
I feel like that could be how Daniel describes the Fiction Fans podcast. She buys her own books and she has her recording room, and when it's Wednesdays, I don't really get involved.
I think that on the whole, he's a better boyfriend or husband than Carrot, though, because he at least responds appropriately when you talk about things.
Oh, yes. That's not even on the table. It's very interesting how there are several criticisms of him throughout the book with very varying degrees of validity.
Yes.
But they're kind of all given the same page time. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, no, I mean, again, I think that statement from Vimes says more about how Vimes views other species than anything that Pratchett is trying to say about Carrot's relationship with Angua.
In the context of the series as a whole, I agree with you, because we do see Vimes being, I guess, speciesist, racist.
I mean, he is incredibly speciesist or racist, or both.
Yes, but that's the only part of this whole book that brings it up. So I guess we did just say you should read the whole series, so you would know that it's in that wider context. Just within this book, that doesn't like give you all of that. It's just him criticizing their relationship in a series of criticisms. I don't know.
I get where you're coming from, but I think that this is one of those places where you do have to recognize that this is not the starting point for a series, or it shouldn't be the starting point for the series. I guess technically you could read it first, but you're better served reading something else first. So you really should have all of the other context from all of the other books about Vimes that you've read so far to know how he views non-human species, like people.
Yeah, you're right. It just feels like everything else in this book is given context that you need. And anyway, that's all. We did get to see a little bit more of Vimes and Sybil, his wife. I feel like we saw them get together in one of the early books, and then we don't really see them interact at all for like 3 books in a row.
Yeah, there's a dearth of Sybil in like some of those middle books.
Yeah. And it was a little frustrating at the beginning of this one because early on, she's kind of portrayed as the like nagging harridan, which was a bummer. But then we see a little bit more, and it becomes clear that she's nagging Vimes to actually go to bed ever and maybe sleep or eat once in a while. And we do get to see some of her internal monologue, really appreciating Vimes for his Vimesiness. She just wants him to take care of himself. And so that's just a much more supportive vibe. She has a much more supportive role than you get right away at the beginning.
I don't know. I never thought that she was coming off as a nagging harridan in the beginning, but it's true that this was my umpteenth reread, and so I do have that context of what comes later in the book, maybe coloring my view.
I think because her requests for him to take care of himself like a regular person are, again, mixed in with her making him wear stuffy clothes and go to dumb noble events. They're kind of treated like he treats those the same way. It's like, oh, Sybil's just asking me to do stuff again. And so when we start with the like, you have to wear these funny pantyhose, and then I would like to have dinner with you someday this week. I don't know. It takes some reconciling. And then when you do finally get to her internal monologue, you're like, oh, no, she has a very good point. And she does like enable him to go off and do policing. She just wants him to be healthy.
I mean, she's a pretty low-key wife in many respects, I would say.
She's got her own thing going on. She's raising dragons.
She does have her own thing going on, but she's, I think, enormously understanding of all of the times that he runs off on her. And she gets a lot of props in my book for that.
I agree.
I mean, he runs off, to be fair, he runs off to do important stuff, but still.
Yeah, he's not going drinking with the lads. Vimes gets some very good monologues, internal musings mostly, in this book that I think encapsulate why reading a book about a policeman doesn't bother me. Mostly because a lot of his policing is directed at the upper class.
He's very anti-establishment.
Yeah. And very much trying to fight against the systems of, wow, prestige is not the word. The P word. Privilege.
I like it being the P word.
But he uses his authority to fight against the systems of privilege instead of enabling and perpetuating them, which is nice. There's a quote that, like, there must be policemen for kings or something to that effect, and that was very good.
Yeah.
There's also a very, very good quote that I must read verbatim. At one point, several of our main characters are in a submarine. No, that's not actually the context. I mean, that's true, but that's not the context of the quote.
But you are not wrong.
So we see some extremely minor characters in a fishing boat, and one of them says, "There's no fresh water and all the ground's full of salt, Dad, and it smells bad. That's the smell of freedom, that is. Smells like someone did a really big fart, Dad." And that's just canon now. Freedom smells like farts.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
On the subject of quotes, this book has a lot of bangers, but particularly it has the very iconic quote.
I know, I should have put those little flaggy post-its in. Oh, well.
Yeah, but it has the particularly iconic quote. But you know what they say, lad? Give a man a fire and he's warm for a day, but set fire to him and he's warm for the rest of his life.
That's the same fisherman father-son, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
They have a lot of really good dialogue in this book.
They do. I mean, this book has some great quotes about a variety of subjects.
It also focuses a lot on the effects of war on the common folk versus the people who are pushing for it. I kind of feel like Pratchett might be saying war is bad.
Did you know that Pratchett wrote an anti-war book?
What? This episode of Fiction Fans is brought to you by war. What is it good for?
I have a Words Are Weird, and it is a book-related Words Are Weird for once. At one point in this book, Vimes is talking about the education that you get in the Shades, which is like the slums of Ankh-Morpork. And he says, but down in the Shades, no one's had any training in arms either. Wouldn't know an épée from a saber. No, what they're good at is a broken bottle in one hand and a length of 4x2 in the other. And my Words Are Weird specifically revolves around that use of 4x2. Because here in the US, we would say a 2x4. And I just think it's really interesting that that switched in the UK.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I think our way makes more sense or if it just sounds better. I do think just verbally 2x4 sounds better than 4x2. But most often, or at least with lumber that I'm familiar with, it's the 4 that's changing, right? 2x4, 2x6, 2x8. And I don't know if I actually like that the 2 is in front, since that's not the variable. Or do I? Because it's the word at the end that's changing.
Well, no, but because that is also the variable, because you can get a 1x4.
Yeah, but no one does that.
You can get a 4x4. Yeah, I've bought, maybe not a 1x4, but I've bought that length of or width of wood before.
Okay. Those are not often used in the construction of houses.
Not in the construction, but in the detailing, yes.
All right.
Like, you're not going to use a 2x4 in railing or molding.
No, you would buy molding for that. You made your own out of 1x4s?
Well, I have not made my own. My stepfather actually has. But I think there are a lot of people who, not molding, but like
trim or whatever.
Trim, yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's true. And I have seen 4x4s used for like footings and stuff.
Fence posts.
Yeah. So I guess it doesn't matter which order they go in if both of them are equally variable.
But I do think that 2x4 sounds better than 4x4. Maybe that's just because we're habituated to hearing 2x4.
I think 2x. Just think about it. 2x sounds much better than 4x.
But also 1x4 sounds better than a 4x1.
Yeah. Wait, that you're still agreeing with me though?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm just saying that it's not specifically 2x, because I think 1x sounds better.
Also,
yeah.
8x2 sounds terrible.
Yes, it does.
So, that's where I stand on that.
Yeah. Anyway, words are weird.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
We also have a Patreon where you can support us and occasionally find our show notes and other nonsense.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye!
Bye.